I'm focused on his spirit cause it keeps me from his fire. The Holy Ghost was with me, so my fear I leave behind. My sins were all diminished when he took that breath and died. And if you think I'ma give up on my God, the devil is a lie. The devil is a lie. The devil is a lie.
Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about Candace Owens, some more stuff that she said, after the letter situation. But she's really doubling down on Turning Point USA as if they are hiding things about what happened to Charlie Kirk and that Charlie Kirk was killed because of his views on Israel. That's the indication that I think she's really loudly giving. And so there's new conspiracies afoot, and I think evidence that kind of strikes down her allegations and stuff, which she hasn't really provided receipts, not good receipts anyway. But a lot of this is obviously a distraction, and I think it's interesting that she so desperately wants what happened to Charlie to be anything other than an indoctrinated leftist murdered him. And there's a lot of conversations about Charlie Kirk and who he was, and people trying to say that it was hateful and so on. And it's obviously a distraction, so we don't have to talk about left-wing violence. And the New York Times has even uplifted Hassan Piker, who's encouraged left-wing violence. Destiny, this Twitch streamer, is going on a tour right now with the Unbleep America tour or whatever. And he has said some horrific things, including about Charlie Kirk and his assassination. So there's been multiple polls about how the left is more prone to accept political violence and think it's acceptable. Mostly for younger people, and it is concerning, and that is what we should be talking about. And I know people say, no, right-wing violence. There's all this list about how there's more right-wing violence, and those numbers are skewed because of how they decide to count them. But considering our evidence, including polling, we can see that there is an issue. We can see that there is absolutely an issue. So that's what we'll be talking about today. Also, if we got time, I want to... You guys know we covered that illegal alien who was a superintendent. I think maybe we talked about it on Monday. I don't think we talked about it on Friday. I don't think the story is that old. But the story just keeps getting worse. Not only was he really an illegal alien, he also apparently voted when he lived in Maryland. So it's just like this total web of left-wing, the worst possible things that you could think of are just attached to the story now, including faking his credentials and them not really checking his citizenship I-9 stuff when he filed or whatever, and they gave him the job of a superintendent of Des Moines, Iowa. So it's just a crazy story. But before we jump into everything, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on the website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation on the website because it does cost a stream, or my side, all that good. So you guys can support it. I should appreciate it and appreciate you guys. You guys can also check out different merch that's available at the website, like the I'm Not the Victim You're Looking For t-shirt. I also got, the Be Better Not Bitter shirt. That's really neat. I also have other kinds of stuff you guys can check out. Like mugs as well. We got the pumpkin spice mug that's available. I did draw the little chibi Trump myself. And so you guys can check that out. I do also have books that are available on my website. But let me, I was going to actually pull up my site because I do have my page for bigger up. So I just want to show you guys. Now this is actually Ninja Dust. So this is actually my book website. When you go to blacktnews.com, there's a banner on the book website that actually on the merchandise page that will take you to my book website, but you guys can just observe that this is the website for my book website, ninjadustpublishing.com. And you guys can learn more about, my different books and stuff. And in the about section, you guys can see that there's something about me, there's stuff about my books, um, which they list them all over there. So bigger's the new one. So all my stuff is there. All my fiction is first, and the nonfiction stuff is at the bottom. We got, of course, God is blatantly against abortion. So if you haven't picked that up, pick that up. And there's also this parental advisory page as well. So a lot of people ask about my books and if they're, too mature or whatever for their kids. I actually, just wrote the different kind of scenes that parents might want to know about, like whether there's kissing, and I do fade to black. Nothing, my stuff isn't worse than anything that you might have seen on a CW show, but so it details like what's in there, but some of my stuff is can be pretty violent. But anyway, I wanted to do that for parents. So that's available on my site. And then there's like all these different pages for each book. So on the bigger page, it's my little baby dinosaur. It's so cute. There's a little summary there and some details, and there's information about the release party, and the cart you guys can add to it. The hardback cover, I don't have it with me. No, I don't. The hardcover copy is $25 and the paperback is $15. If you buy any two paperbacks that I have, if you buy two, you'll get $5 off, and that'll go with like any bundle. If you do buy any books with the pre-order books for Bigger, they won't be shipped out until Bigger is released. So if you just want to buy something now and receive it now, I recommend that you just order those things separately. Like if you want to get like The Color of God's Eyes or something, and you want it like next week or something, I would order that separately than Bigger. I did add a signed books page because I didn't have a way to get my books outside of just going to Amazon. So now you guys can purchase them right off of my website here. And however, if you're outside of the US, I don't have that set up. The shipping is higher, obviously, when you ship stuff internationally. And if you would like to still get a signed book, because you guys can still get them on Amazon, except for Bigger right now, but all the other ones you guys can get on Amazon. If you want to get it from the outside of the US, like from Australia or Canada or something, you guys can, fill out information about which books you want, signing information, etc. And then I will send an invoice with the cost with the printing and stuff. Not the printing, I'm sorry, of the shipping. So that's the news about my new book and stuff. And so if you guys would like to pick that up, I encourage you guys to pick it up and get your copy now, and we'll have it signed, and we'll put some nice little swag in your envelope and bookmarks and whatnot. So we'll figure it out and have a good time. So I hope to see some of my locals at my book signing event. Let me see some comments. Anyway, I guess it wasn't any. I thought not any about the books. So anyway, that's my news, my personal news of the day. I just wanted to share because I know you guys are curious, and some of you got some of my books and wanted to know the updates for it. So that's the update. Anyway, let's chit chat about Miss Owens and what's going on now. So yesterday we talked about how there was a letter released with from Charlie Kirk to Bibi Netanyahu, and Candace Owens had been, claiming that it was going to, well, that Bibi had misrepresented what was in there because he had read a little bit of it when he was talking about Charlie Kirk after he had passed, and he talked about, his love for Israel, and how it's been an honor to be a defender of it. And so Candace was like, no, that's not true. He misrepresented that, and he's omitting stuff, and it's a lie, and so on. And she just really misrepresented BB and the letter itself, and by insinuating there was like nefarious things that he just like left out, because it really was Charlie Kirk telling him how he can win an information war against the critics and stop the rising tide of like anti-Israel sentiment. So he gave him some critiques for sure, but coming from a place of love, but he didn't abandon the pro-Israel cause. Candace Owens has decided to come directly at Turning Point USA with more conspiracies and stuff going on. So I want to play you guys this video from Candace. And it's a lot. It's a lot.
About 48 hours before Charlie Kirk died, Charlie informed people at Turning Point, as well as Jewish donors and a rabbi, that he had no choice but to abandon the pro-Israel cause outright. Okay, Charlie was done. He said it explicitly, that he refused to be bullied anymore by the Jewish donors. Can you guys answer? Did he express that? Did he also express that he wanted to bring me, Candace Owens, back because he was standing up for himself? And then did he, just 48 hours later, conveniently catch a bullet to the throat before our onstage reunion could happen? It's a yes or a no. Yeah, I'm putting the fire here right at the feet of Turning Point because I am disgusted. I am genuinely disgusted. I am looking around and wondering whether Charlie's entire life was the Truman Show. None of you guys are behaving in the way that you should be behaving, okay? There is no way you are letting these lies fly unless, as I am hearing, unless it is true that there was a big payday that was on the line. And if Charlie radically stated that he was done with Israel, if Charlie said he had no choice but to abandon the pro-Israel cause because of, and I quote, Jewish donors, the behavior of Jewish donors, if he said that, yes or no, well then, I don't know, maybe some people didn't want to take that risk that he was going to become Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson at Turning Point USA with all of those presences, so much presence across college campuses. Maybe they didn't want to take the chance. And I will say this, you know what? Somewhere Charlie is watching, okay? And I hope he knows that we are reunited, okay? We're on stage right now, and the Jewish donors are very angry about it, extremely angry about it.
Okay. That's what Candace Owens had to say. She says, well, a couple things there. To say that she's starting to think that Charlie Kirk's whole life was the Truman Show is just so disrespectful to Charlie himself, to allege that he's just so controlled by everyone else around him. Charlie, who engaged in conversations with people who disagreed with them all the time. Charlie, who was very bold, and he wasn't always right, but he did like to speak what he believed was true. So she's diminishing him. She's diminishing him to imply like he was some kind of controlled puppet. So there's that. Coming for Turning Point USA, as if they're controlling everything. How come everyone is wrong except for Candace? Everyone is lying except for Candace. When I was a kid and I get into an argument with one of my sisters or whatever, and my dad, he would sit and he would listen to both sides and kind of like then dispense justice after he had heard from the both perspectives. But there was one particular sister, um, who she'd be, everyone could say you're wrong, and she'd be like, no, and we're like, you really think like you're the only one right? Like now there could be a situation when perhaps you are the only one who is right. I guess it just kind of depends on the crowd, but she was in the wrong. She was definitely in the wrong. But Candace Owens is the only person who's telling the truth. Turning Point is covering it up. What his wife is covering it up. Like all the evidence that we can see of Charlie Kirk like publicly talking about this stuff and stuff that people know him, his friends, colleagues, etc., all keep affirming that he believed in the cause and that he loved Israel and he was going to defend them. He did have frustrations. He was being pressured by donors, particularly with the Tucker stuff. They don't take international money from, outside of the US. So it just her story just doesn't really make sense. All the evidence points to the contrary. She ginned up this letter as if BB was so disgusting for omitting stuff when there was nothing wrong with BB mentioning that Charlie Kirk loved Israel, because the whole entire letter was about defending Israel and how they could do a better job at it. Some people have said that Erica needs to sue Candace Owens. I don't know how much people want to do that. You can't, from my understanding, because I know I'm not a lawyer. I've watched different lawyers address it, and I don't think you can like really sue on behalf of a person who's passed like that. But making allegations about Turning Point USA like that, I don't know, maybe there's action to take, but it is a distraction, and she knows she's a distraction. I think it's so strange. Well, I don't think it's so strange. I suppose I'll reword it. Like, ask yourself, why does she want there to be something else going on when it comes to Charlie Kirk's death? Why doesn't she just accept when the evidence is there? You think Tyler Robinson's parents turned their son in to receive the death penalty and he didn't do it? You really like think that? You think that the prince and everything else that they have just doesn't match, and they're all just lying, and he's just taking the fall? They just found somebody who happens to be dating a trans person who's written all this negative stuff, and he's on camera, and like all the evidence points to this kid, but it's not him. Charlie Kirk was actually killed for his anti-Israel sentiments that he hasn't voiced and people don't know. It would suck if Charlie all of a sudden flipped the script and decided to abandon that cause, but life would go on and people would assume, I don't know, he's doing it for clicks or money, or I don't know. It's not worth killing over. That's an ego, ma'am. But Tyler Robinson said he didn't like Charlie Kirk because he was hateful. And there is an uptick here of different violence concerning the trans issue, people who are trans. And there is support, an uptick of support from the left when it comes to political violence. And here we are talking about Israel and the Jews. It's a distraction. And you might be saying, why are you talking about it? Because unfortunately, people still believe her or still want to follow her or whatever. And I don't understand it. I don't understand it. I understand there's people out there who hate Jews in Israel and stuff. And maybe you're like a Nick Fuentes kind of person. Maybe you're, just a free Palestine person. And you were cheering Candace Owens on when she said Jews have always killed Christians and blamed Muslims. Like, if you're in that kind of crowd, yikes. But there's people who aren't, who are still like saying, well, Candace is just asking questions. Those weren't questions. She's making accusations, and she's been making accusations in the midst of a investigation about a murder case where someone could get the death penalty because they assassinated Charlie Kirk. Like, commentators, we talk about stuff that's reported and people can speculate or whatever. But in the real world, there's going to be a murder trial where they're going to present plenty of evidence. And to have all this stuff kind of floating around, there's a reason why they limit the amount of information that goes on prior to trial. It's because despite the fact that we're pretty confident that we got the right guy, he still deserves a fair trial. And if he doesn't get one, if there's some kind of reasonable doubt out there because of some stupid mistake, does Charlie get justice? So I think she's been a problem. I think how she's been acting has been grotesque. But she said 48 hours. Charlie had completely said he was going to abandon Israel. He had said that. Oh, and then he caught a bullet 48 hours later. Okay, well, here's someone saying they were talking to him 24 hours before he died.
We actually did speak for the last time less than 24 hours before the assassination happened. We had a Zoom call, a friend of mine, him, a couple of his producers. It was a small call. We were literally talking, above all, about the anti-Israel questions that he expected to receive on this campus tour. And we were kind of talking him through talking points and strategy and how to deal with these expected hostile questions. And what Charlie was essentially trying to do was he was essentially trying to figure out how to navigate this to keep the Nick Fuentes neo-Nazi Groyper stuff at bay while trying to meet the younger generation, the Gen Z folks who are pretty wobbly on this issue, kind of meet them on their own terms and to try to kind of guide them towards a better place. It's been really hard. And, I've known Charlie for a handful of years, as I know you have as well, but we really had gotten quite a bit closer just over the past year and a half. He was just a fundamentally good person. He was a decent man. He was someone who, in all these videos that people have seen in the viral YouTube clips of him debating these left-wing college students, he never gets flustered. He never gets angry. He never raised his voice. He was a kind, gentle soul.
Yeah. So all evidence points to he didn't really change his opinion. I mean, what Josh was saying there was essentially what his letter was talking about. They're concerned about the different things that they hear on college campuses all the time. And he wants talking points to be able to deal with that. He wants to push back on that. Because he does care about Israel and does support them. He doesn't support everything their government does. I don't support everything their government does. Absolutely not. I don't support everything our government does. I don't support everything our president does. No. But do I believe that they should finish their war? As in also finish by achieving their military objective of demolishing Hamas and getting their hostages? Yes, I support that. Yeah, I do. Absolutely. So again, why is Candace so desperate to make this about Israel and some kind of conspiracy about how he died and why he was killed, when there was a man who said he was hateful, who was living with another man who claims to be a woman, and you see an uptick of the leftist violence, and not only an uptick of that, an uptick of support of it, and we watched so many left-wing people support his assassination. People making merch of his neck being blown out. People making flyers of his neck, like a target around his neck, and posting them at college campuses where different other speakers are going. We've seen the New York Times platform Hassan Piker, who has talked a lot of times about bringing violence against political opponents, who's a very open, like, communist or whatever. Destiny is on a tour right now. Destiny said if his parents were, he mocked the man who was killed at the Trump rally and said, oh, if his parents, because he was raised Republican or whatever, if they were killed at a Trump rally, he would think that they deserved it. He went on Piers Morgan's show and said a bunch of crazy stuff too, and crazy stuff online too as well. And he'll always go back, oh, well, they mocked what happened to Paul Pelosi. I think that was terrible, people mocking what happened to Paul Pelosi. That was a weird story. Very weird story. And there was all kinds of weird information coming out at first, and some of it false that people were, spreading or whatever. I had to go back and like correct some stuff, but people making jokes about that, watching the video of him being hit in the head with the hammer was horrific. So I think it was Don Jr. who made a meme about it or posted something about it. That was really gross. I didn't like it. It's still not what happened to Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk was assassinated while he was debating. Charlie Kirk was someone who spoke about how we shouldn't be violent, how we needed to talk so he wouldn't be violent. And his opponents are supporting violence and celebrating the fact that he was murdered while he was talking to someone on the left who was trying to make the case that they weren't violent. That's really the craziest thing about all this stuff. And the question was specifically about, it got into a conversation about trans shooters, and then the shot was taken. I think violence was Charlie Kirk's last word. But they'll platform Destiny, they'll platform Hassan. You had Ta-Nehisi Coates, and Nicole Hannah-Jones talking about Charlie Kirk, and they just want to say, oh, he's hateful, to paint this idea as if he got what he deserved. And it's wrong to mourn him. And they want to make that the narrative instead of talking about why the stuff happens and why the left is so violent, and they encourage the violence. When something happens and it's bad, people on the right usually go, yeah, that's bad. I disavow violence like that. Yeah, of course. Very quickly. The amount of people celebrating what happened to Charlie Kirk or continuing to lie about his views. And not just fringe people online. Not just people's neighbors and friends and their nurses and their doctors and their HR people or whoever, which that's alarming enough. But AOC, making her speech on the floor and then tweeting out crazy stuff. Ilhan Omar. And it just continues. And we don't address the issue with left-wing violence. Let me show you guys some polls. There's a couple detailing how so this is a Cato 2015 poll. Majority of strong liberals say violence against the rich can be justified. 9 in 10 conservatives say it can't be. Now, people really did push back against people who were celebrating Charlie Kirk's murder. But people didn't push back hard enough with the CEO who was murdered in broad daylight. I was disgusted. I was disgusted by so many people who were celebrating that, trying to, uplift Luigi after that murder. Someone who was well off and could have paid for a lot of people's healthcare himself. Didn't need to take a life and blow his own life. And he's probably not going to get the amount of justice that is owed to him either, because it's freaking New York. But this isn't even just the end of it. Let me see if I can make that a little bigger. There's more. Is it ever justified for citizens to resort to violence in order to achieve political goals? And you can see the liberals there. It's low on the higher end as far as the age bracket, but boy, is it up there. Boy, is it up there. You can say, well, 30 is not a lot. I think that's an alarming amount. I think that's an alarming amount right now. And then there's more. There's more. Most Americans say it's unacceptable to be happy about public figures' deaths, but younger and more liberal Americans are more likely to call it acceptable. And every time someone tries to have a conversation about this stuff, they try to say, oh, well, I don't know. They try to do whataboutism and they try to pin it on Donald Trump's rhetoric. There's been a lot of crazy left-wing rhetoric for a while now. I mean, the issue, and if we go back to Destiny and some of the stuff that he was saying, he was like, if you wanted Charlie Kirk to live, then you guys shouldn't have voted in Donald Trump. And then Wilson, gosh, what's his first name? Something Wilson said, is that a threat? And Destiny's opinion was like, hey, well, there's been a lot of riots and violence and stuff, under his tenure. So if you want it to stop, then, don't vote for Republican. And it's kind of like them saying, we're going to act a fool as long as you guys keep electing Republicans. And, maybe we won't break the store if you guys elect our guy, is essentially what's going on. We'll break your kneecaps if you win. And that there was that kind of sentiment that was obvious, like during 2020, when people were like, yeah, well, if Trump wins, we'll riot. We'll keep rioting. We'll keep doing this stuff. We'll calm down if we get our guy in office. Not that they love Biden it's so much, but they liked him obviously more than Trump. But during BLM time, there was a lot of violence, and there was CNN, that Chiron, that said fiery but mostly peaceful protests, and people were trying to ignore the riots that were going on, downplay how violent they were, make it seem like Kyle Rittenhouse was just the devil who murdered Black people. That so many people believe that he murdered Black people. I did an article detailing like a lot of lies and stuff around the Kyle Rittenhouse case. And I had sent it to my dad because he was overseas at the time doing mission work. And he's usually pretty plugged into politics, but again, he was doing mission stuff. And he said, from what he had heard, he thought that he had killed Black people. And he said, it's really scary what the media can make you believe. He said it's really scary. My dad doesn't use words like, oh, that's so scary. But he said it was really scary. And then I was talking about it with my mom, and my mom was like, I thought he had killed Black people until you said something. Now, by the way, all life is precious. It doesn't matter if you're Black or white, but I think, oh gosh, it would have been so much worse for Kyle Rittenhouse if he had actually killed a Black person, which there was one guy who came at him who was Black, and I think maybe he missed or something. But there was a Black guy who was attacking him, and it still would have been like self-defense if whether they were Black or white. But if they were so desperate to lie, which there are headlines that talked about him killing Black people that night, Can you imagine how terrible it would have been if that was actually true? Because the world was just so focused on race, but they still treated him like a villain anyway because he showed up at a Black Lives Matter, riot. I guess they wanted people to just let stuff burn, and if you cared about property, you were lectured by like Don Lemon, for example, like, oh, this idea that you got to protect your street. Oh, you got to protect your property. He went on some kind of like communist rant. It was so weird. And we addressed that at the time. But that was a sentiment from a lot of folks. Like, if you care about this stuff, then you don't care about Black lives, was what was told, what was pushed. And people were actually being killed and harmed, attacked during that time too. But people wanted to look the other way because they were trying to achieve a political goal. So if you're very concerned about these numbers, if you're, if the fact that there's this trend of Democrats on the left who, believe that it's acceptable to actually hurt their opponent, you should be concerned, but it shouldn't be news to you that they're willing to ignore, overlook, or whatever violence. It's been going on for a minute. It's been going on for a minute. You've seen the other day there was a cop killer that was being celebrated by the Chicago Teachers Union, and then the Chicago mayor and Ayanna Pressley both gave the cop killer a shout out. There's an old video, by the way, that someone uncovered of the Chicago mayor talking about communism and stuff. It's like, oh, he's a legit one, huh? Not that should be surprising. Not that should be surprising at all. But they're trying to distract from a lot of this stuff. And I do think it's important to defend Charlie and his legacy and debunk a lot of stuff, which people don't even really care. A lot of folks don't care. There'll be enough people who will go look at the truth and be like, oh my gosh, these people have lied to me. So what else are they lying about? And maybe they'll go down a rabbit hole and then vote right. That's important for those things to happen. But it is a distraction. So we don't talk about the important issues about why he was killed and the sort of ideology that made it happen. So I really don't appreciate what Candace Owens has been doing. People who keep kind of trying to cover for her, I don't appreciate you guys either. I really don't. Anyway, I want to move on to a little bit about this clip from C-SPAN. So someone called in. I think this is funny because someone had called into the show because they work for Heritage. And so they accused him of being a DEI person because he's a black guy, to get under his skin. And so he shares a sentiment that that I've noticed. So I want to show you guys this clip.
My last question to him, since he's a member of the Heritage, he's also, I guess, a promoter of the Project 2025. And I would ask him, are you a DEI hire for Heritage? Since that seems to be...
All right, Anwar.
Let me answer the second question first, right? In terms of being a DEI hire, there's no part of me that believes that. I have the respect of my colleagues. My work stands for itself. As I said, I've been writing about these issues and thinking about these issues since I was 15, but even in official capacity for over a decade. But it's interesting that some of the same people who say that Black folks need DEI and celebrate DEI will use DEI as a way to insult Black people with whom they disagree. I find that actually odd, quite interesting.
my last question to him, since he's a member of the
Yeah, so he's correct. It is interesting that people they'll want to defend DEI, but then they'll use it as an insult. And so I did a video a couple days ago about Charlie Kirk and his black pilots conversation versus also Joy Reid and affirmative action stuff. And I just really broke down how the left, they really want to have these handicaps, like DEI, affirmative action, all this other stuff, but they don't want the stigma that's attached to it. So they can see themselves that it's insulting. Like they're like, oh yeah, representation, Kamala Harris, Ketanji Brown Jackson. It's about time. It's about all that stuff, blah blah blah. But if you say, hey, they are DEI hires, how dare you say that? That's racist. Okay, well, is it racist that they are one? Or is it racist that we noticed and we called it out? Like, because Joe Biden said he was going to pick a woman, and then all these other Democrats were like, it needs to be a black woman, and he picked Kamala Harris. And then he said from jump he was going to pick a black woman on the Supreme Court because the court should reflect America or something like that. I think the court should try to protect the law, and that's the priority or whatever. But that was what was on Biden's mind. So he did it for like restorative justice or whatever, or racial justice and so on. So you could say, well, they're very qualified. Nobody believes Kamala Harris was a qualified and the best person to be the vice president of the United States or the president. Like, come on. Out of anyone, come on. Even their bench, I don't think they have a good bench, but even out of their bench, like, come on. But as far as Ketanji Brown Jackson, you can have like a good resume and still not be a good employee and not be competent and good at your job or whatever. But Ketanji Brown Jackson, her merit wouldn't have gotten her that job if she weren't black. Isn't that a problem? I think that's a problem. If she's so qualified for that job, how come if she was a different sex, she wouldn't have it? If she's so qualified for that job, how come if she were white, she wouldn't have it? So these people will throw out and say like, oh, are you a DE hire? And that's what people say to me. I'm like, that's nuts. You're trying to diminish my skill set. Like when I got hired at the Michigan Republican Party, I was definitely the best person for the job. I did fantastic work. I was a great find for them, for sure. No, I wasn't DEI. Now people will sometimes come to my book table and be like, oh, I'm going around to all the black tables, and always find it a little funny. But I'm a capitalist. So I don't want to get to a big like political argument. I'm trying to sell my book, whatever. So yeah, so I smile and I tell them about my books and I take their money. But do I think that people can do whatever they want to? If that's their motivation and they want like diversity or whatever, that's how they want to spend their money, that's fine. That's their choice. I do think it's interesting that people want to announce to you like, I just want you to know that I'm visiting the black tables. Do you want your I'm an ally badge? Like, do you want to I recognize my white privilege? Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, what do you want me to do with that information? It's so weird. It's so weird. Thank you for your dollars, but like, it's so weird. Someone had asked the question about the shooting. I think you're talking about the shooting in Michigan and saying you think it's somehow related to what happened to the Charlie Kirk assassination. That I have not heard any sort of connection there. I did cover that story on Monday, and there was something I didn't want to say, but I guess I had a relative who was actually on the news because they lived in that area and they knew the guy. They didn't know him well, so I'm like taking out the trash and stuff. but I had just found that out before I went on air on Monday. And before I also went on air, I thought about like, oh my gosh, I have a friend who there's a pretty like prominent like Mormon family that went to school with me, and I'm like, oh my god, my friend, she's no longer Mormon, but her family is still Mormon, and so I'm like, oh my gosh, I wonder if they know those people. So I reached out to my friend, and it was her family's church. It was her family's church, and they know the people who died. One of them was very close to her brother. So I was just praying for the families, the victims, and well, I guess the victims' families rather. Um, it's just a horrific thing what happened. I'm just like, why the Mormons? Why? Like what? She told me that I guess what people heard when he got out, because it just a horrific thing to imagine someone driving into the building, not just coming through the front door, but like driving into it and then opening fire. That he said, do you believe in Jesus or do you believe in Joseph Smith? So it was anti-Mormon sentiment. I don't know what it is beyond that. I know the person who killed Charlie Kirk did come from a Mormon family. From my understanding, he also rejected religion. I heard something about like some like door knockers coming by and him saying some not nice things, but Tyler Robinson was, indoctrinated with like left-wing ideology, and that led to what he did. So the person who did this on Monday was just obviously not well in his mind and stuff, and I don't know, still waiting on details about that story. Let me look at your comments, see someone else is writing about it, but yeah, when I was messaging my friend, I kind of was a bit at a loss for words. I didn't know what to say other than I'm praying. Like, and sometimes I guess that's all you can do is offer thoughts and prayers. Sometimes you don't have the right words to say. That would just be so terrible. It'd be so terrible. I saw a vid where the LDS shooter had a previous relationship with a woman in the church, had removed many of his tattoos to attend the church. Looks like a personal beef. I don't know. I'll have to she didn't, I don't think she knew much more than that at the time when I talked to her. And I haven't looked a lot into the story since we reported on it on Monday. So I'll have to just to be frank. So I'll have to keep looking into it, but I'm just really, these stories are so horrific anyway. And there's something extra sinister, I guess, about driving into the church. A lot of people are just really broken about it right now. So just continue to pray for those folks. But there's some true evil in this world, some people who are not well in the head, and we don't take mental health seriously in this country, beyond not being able to really hold people who are not well when you see that they're not well. The isolation that we had during the pandemic. I heard stories about people who were just like, maybe they got to do their Zoom calls, but they couldn't meet their therapist, and people who had taken their own lives. Just horrific stuff. How we're so chronically online and people don't go outside and touch grass and really engage with in real life. And people go down these rabbit holes of different conspiracy stuff online. And it's bad on the left, but it's bad on the right too. It's bad on the right too. When you don't even know what's real anymore, when you can't accept truth and evidence when you're so totally demoralized. And what's interesting, I played the clip of the former KGB agent who talked about how you really thwart a country. You don't do like the James Bond spy stuff, that's movie stuff. Not that there's not some of that, but mostly how the KGB would operate in tearing down a nation is that you go into their institutions and you make people just morally depraved, and you demoralize people so much to the point with their ethics and their values and so on. And then when you keep doing that, eventually people cannot determine what is truth. Even if you show them facts, they can't determine what is truth. And I understand that there's so many reasons not to trust our government institutions, especially during COVID, because we were lied to and gaslit and abused, and that's not the only situation. But COVID is obviously a really big example and very recent. But sometimes things are just what they seem, and there's not something deeper than what's going on. But someone always has to find a new truth, a new spin on the situation, and act like, oh, they were trying to keep it from you. They were hiding all this stuff, So that's what Miss Owens does for sure. And that's what the left does too. The government, we're heading toward a shutdown. Not that I care about stuff. I just, it's kind of like, whatever, they'll figure it out. Like the Democrats are decided to, I guess, pick the fight over illegal immigration and illegals getting health care or whatever paid for. And it seems like an odd hill to kind of die on. And they're like, oh, this is going to be the Republicans' fault. Or maybe it's your fault for not just kind of going along with the bill and keeping it open for a little while because you guys want to throw hissy fits. I don't understand the Democrats picking such terrible battles. But I guess they got nothing going for them. Like they're mad because Pete Hegseth had a speech the other day and talked about how he wants fitness standards and doesn't want military folks to be fat and all this stuff. And Sonny hosting on The View is like, I just find this so odd. It didn't understand it. And why don't you understand? You want everyone to be peak physical condition. And if you're a general, I guess you could be pudgy and still obviously lead very well. But people look to other folks and you're not physically fit and you're over them. It probably will be just better for morale for people to see, other folks who can work out with them and keep up, Before I let you guys go, I want to point out something that was very fascinating to me, because there's all these stories about people being fired over what they were saying about Charlie Kirk, celebrating his death and so on. So, Glenn Greenwald, this is how I saw this article, was pointing out or trying to claim there were a lot of people fired after Charlie Kirk's assassination for celebrating it, but there were also many people, perhaps the majority of those fired, who never even hinted at celebrating the killing, but merely expressed criticisms of Charlie's views and ideology. And so there was this article. She was fired for a comment on her private Facebook account. And they talk about a woman who was fired for what she said about Charlie Kirk, but they left out a lot of stuff as far as what she said. So they mentioned, so this article starts 2 days after Charlie Kirk was killed. Suzanne Schwirsch. Oh no, they put oh gosh darn it, they put a what's the name on it. I did read the article. They put they put it behind a paywall. Okay, well, she mentioned, that she didn't like his views, and they make it seem like that was enough really to get her fired or whatever. And that's not all that she said. They left some bits out. They left some bits out. I'm trying to see if there's a screenshot of what she had said. That this is let me go back. So they wrote this article about it. Glenn was complaining about it. Glenn Greenwald. But this was her post. Okay. Let me be clear. If you think Charlie Kirk was a wonderful person, we can't be friends. So that's what they make it seem like she was fired for. The we can't be friends if you thought he was a wonderful person. But she also said his death is a tragedy, which was, and I can and do feel for his wife and children. I believe in the resurrection, and while it's difficult, I can and do pray for his soul. Charlie Kirk's death is a reflection of violence, fear, and hatred he sowed. It does not excuse his death, and it's a sad truth. So I mean, I take issue, of course, with her first top part. You know, but saying that his death is a reflection of the violence, fear, and hatred he sowed. Okay, he was killed for spreading hate, according to the person who killed him. But when you say things like men can't become women, people do find that hateful. That's not worth you being murdered over. And Suzanne doesn't say that that's worth him being murdered over, but that does read as he reaped what he sowed. I mean, she put sowed in there. That's what she typed. So that's a little bit more than just merely criticizing his view. I think it's and they didn't put the rest of that in the article. They just put I believe they just put the portion that said, if you think Charlie Kirk is a wonderful person, we can't be friends. Like that's the big problem. No, the rest of it is more problematic than that. Okay. The shooting is a tragedy, and I can and do feel for a college campus experience an active shooter situation. The deaths of Melissa and Mark Hortman, the children who shot and killed Minneapolis last month, and the children who shot in Colorado today are all tragedies that also deserve your attention. Charlie Kirk excused the death of children in the name of the Second Amendment. He did not. So she lied. On him. All these so-called, I'm a believer. I believe in the resurrection. Okay, but you believe in bearing false witness. That's a problem. That's a sin. That's terrible, Susan. Charlie Kirk did not excuse the death of children. If you are unaware of what quote she's referencing, and people keep mentioning but keep being dishonest about, Charlie Kirk was having a conversation about the price of liberty, the price of freedom, and he's correct. He said, as long as we have an armed population, there's going to be some gun deaths. And is it worth it to have some gun deaths to still have the right to bear arms, which exists to protect yourself from a tyrannical government? The answer is yes. But he'll also mention that more people die from cars every year, accidents. But yet we still believe that it's worth driving. And people say, oh, that's different. No, it's not different. His point is the same. We weigh the cost of liberty. We don't just say people are dying, we have to get rid of this thing. Because he could obviously brought up abortion in these discussions, but he brings up car accidents. But if you're concerned about children dying, we could always ban abortion. But it is illegal to murder people with firearms. At least that, right? But unless, what's the crazy thing about people criticizing Charlie's worldview is that you agree with him. Most people agree with him. Because as long as there are guns in the hands of people, there will be some fatalities. Including, and most likely, the high number would be from suicides, gang violence. So unless you're going to confiscate every gun, which Charlie was murdered by a single shot from a bolt action rifle, unless you're going to confiscate every single gun and you believe that the public is entitled to some kind of private right to own firearms, even if it was just to hunt, and we somehow got it very, very limited, people would still die from gun death. So you actually agree with Charlie that there is an acceptable cost number. It's worth a risk. Or just accepting the truth of the matter, just the fact of life. Just like people are killed with baseball bats and knives and other things. Or like the car example. So we just talked about what happened in the church in Michigan. Someone drove a car into the church and then started opening fire. What about people who drive cars into people to kill them? If you go to the White House, it didn't used to be like this. They're like cement like barricades or whatever, so you can't just like drive up to the White House and do that. Like after there were stories of people, you know, just driving up and ramming stuff, they erected all those barricades and stuff. But you could get like pretty close when I was a kid without you know, all that stuff there. But things happen and you up the security. As a matter of fact, I was watching this one Chinese guy. He's like, we don't even have a gun problem in China, but we have walls and all kinds of things to protect children. There's one way to get in, and there's security everywhere. He's like, I don't understand why there's not more security. And Charlie Kirk advocated for more security and that we should protect our children. We have armed people protecting our money at banks. Why aren't we protecting our children? So he didn't excuse the gun deaths of children or just kind of want it to happen or just shrugged his shoulders about it. He wanted us to find ways to mitigate gun deaths. And he talked about how we could do that as far as being proactive with having other armed guards, whoever protecting kids, or just culturally what we can do as far as shoring up our family and community structures so we have less violence in general. So this person didn't just criticize Charlie's views. She misrepresented his views and said that his death was his own making. Oh, but yeah, I wish it didn't happen. It's sad. That's why she was canned. So when people write these stories like, oh, they lost their job over this little thing, just ask yourself what they're leaving out. Ask yourself what they're leaving out. And it just really sucks. It really sucks because we need to be able to have some trust in our institutions, but we can't because the crazy, dishonest people, so many of them are running them. So it just leads to just more distrust and just our country not being in good health. Unfortunately. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me. Please go blackteens.com. Check out different content on our website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation on the website because it does cost to stream, run my site, all that good stuff. You guys can support it. Very much appreciate it. And appreciate you guys. You guys can check out different merch that's available on my site, like the My Money, My Business t-shirt. I made that because people would always talk about abortion, like, it's not your any business between a woman and her doctor. I'm like, don't you guys want taxpayer dollars to fund this stuff? But I mean, our taxpayers go into a lot of stuff, and as long as that stuff is attached to our dollars, don't we deserve to know and have a say in it all? But there's also mugs and so on. You guys can check out some of my books. I have so many that you guys can pick out and read, and you guys can go to my book website to see them. But if you just go to blacktnews.com, on the merchandise page, there's a banner will take you to my book website. But let me go ahead and show what it is. There, ninjadustpublishing.com, and you guys can check out my new book, Bigger, and go ahead and pre-order it. I'm very excited about it, and I hope you guys like it. So anyway, thank you guys, and I will see you tomorrow.